المرة اللي فاتت في الابليكيشن اللي فات عملنا شوية أسئلة اللي ممكن يعني القصيدة تتسأل فيها إزاي. وآخر حاجة اتكلمنا فيها إيه هو الفورم اللي استخدمه كيتس وإيه هو الفورم اللي استخدمه وورثورث، وإزاي الفورم اللي استخدمه كل واحد فيهم كان مناسب جدا للأيدياز اللي هو نقلها. وورثورث استخدم الإيطاليان سونت وعرفنا ليه، وكيتس استخدم الشكسبيريان سونت وبرضو عرفنا ليه، عشان عنده 3 فيرز، كل فير كان بيتكلم عليه في كواترن. في الفاينل رايمنج كوبلت هو نقل أفكاره خالص وطلع برؤية جديدة خالص بينها لنا في الفاينل كوبلت. هنكمل هنقول مثلا What is the occasion of writing this poem? This poem composed upon Westminster Bridge. ايه الاوكيجن؟ ويليام وورثورث كتب البوم دي ليه؟ In the summer of 1802 William Wordsworth traveled with his sister Dorothy to Calais, France. They stopped in London, and when they left, it was early in the morning of July the 31st. They crossed over the famous Westminster Bridge to get out of town. Wordsworth apparently wrote the sonnet while sitting on top of his couch. Maybe he was so awed by the city because he didn't live there. He spent much of his time in one of the most picturesque natural landscapes in England, Lake District. The poem is remembered not as a biographical record, but as a beautiful depiction of London in the morning. هو ده الأوكيجن ليه هو كتب البوم دي. هو كان مسافر رايح فرنسا، وقفوا شوية في انجلترا، الصبح بدري شاف شكل لندن في شكل جديد عمره ما توقعه ولا تخيله ولا شافه، وبالتالي he was inspired by the beauty of nature، فكتب القصيدة بتاعته at the same place at the same moment of the experience. ما انتظرش لما يسافر فرنسا او يرجع الليك ديستريكت to recollect الاكسبيرينس دي، but he wrote about it on the spot. اوكي، هنشوف بعد كده سؤال مثلا discuss briefly romanticism as a movement. Romanticism is an artistic and intellectual movement in Europe in the late 18th century. It is characterized by a heightened interest in nature, emphasis on individuals' expression of emotion and imagination, departure from the attitudes and forms of classicism, and rebellion from social rules and conventions. طيب، what is John Keats trying to express throughout his sonnet? جون كيتس كان عاوز يقول ايه؟ كتب السونت دي ليه؟ اوكي، عرفنا وقلنا كذا مرة he was trying to express his fear، الخوف بتاعه، بس هو ما كانش خايف من فكرة الموت في حد ذاته قد ما كان خايف من فكرة ان الموت يمنعه من ان هو يحقق الحاجات اللي بيتمناها. هو كان عارف ان هو هيموت بدري، ففكرة ان الموت هينهي حياته بسرعة كانت هي اللي مخوفاه ليه؟ لانه مش هيقدر يعمل ال3 حاجات اللي هو عايزهم. ايه هم ال3 حاجات دول؟ اول حاجة واهم حاجة بالنسبة له، عشان كده اتكتبت في الفيرست كواترن، كانت ان هو يقدر يكتب شعر ويقدر يكتب كتب كتيرة، لانه هو حاسس ان هو he has the potential to do this, he can do this. انما ايه اللي هيمنعه؟ الموت، early death. الخوف التاني اللي كان بيحاول ينقله ان هو مش هيقدر يستمتع بالطبيعة الجميلة اللي حواليه، ولا هيقدر يستفيد بيها وياخد الاليمنتس بتاعتها اللي بتستخدم في الهاي رومانسز، اللي بتستخدم in a highly elevated language. مش هيقدر يستخدم الطبيعة بكل مفرداتها الجميلة ويستخدمها في الشعر بتاعه. الخوف الثالث بتاعه ان هو طبعا مش هيكون عنده الوقت ان هو يقدر يحب او يقابل انسانة يحبها. فهم دولت الحاجات اللي كان بيحاول to express throughout his sonnet. يبقى هنقول the poet is reflecting upon all the things that he wants in life, namely success, fame and love. Yet he is sure that his life will come to an end before he can achieve his goals. The poem shows his desires and despair. يبقى البوم دي بتعبر عن ايه؟ بتعبر عن his desires and his despair. He wants to write books, he wants to write poetry, he wants to love, he wants to use the elements of nature, but at the same time he's desperate. He knows he will not be able to do all this, he will not be able to realize his dreams. In this sonnet, Keats expresses his fear that he might die before having a chance to experience the love of a woman or develop his talent as a poet. خلاص؟ يبقى البوم بتاعت كيتس دي بتعبر عن ايه؟ بتعبر عن his desires and his despair. اوكي؟ يأسه ورغباته، الحاجات اللي هو بيتمناها، وفي نفس الوقت his hopelessness، هو عارف ان هو ما عندهوش امل يحقق الحاجات دي because of his early death. The sonnet expresses his fear that he might die before having a chance to experience the love of a woman or develop his talent as a poet. خلاص؟ Discuss the form and meter used by Keats in this sonnet. عرفنا طبعا ان الفورم الشكسبيريان sonnet، الميتر iambic pentameter، وان الفورم ده اللي هو استخدمه suits his ideas لان هو استخدم ال 3 quatrains to reflect his 3 fears. When I Have Fears is a Shakespearean sonnet. It is a standard sonnet written in iambic pentameter. Iambic pentameter يعني ايه؟ يعني unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. It consists of 3 quatrains and a final rhyming couplet. Each of the 3 quatrains deals with one of his fears. خلاص احنا عرفنا الحكاية دي وفهمناها كويس جدا. عبارة عن 3 quatrains، 4 سطور 4 سطور 4 سطور، كل واحد منهم اسمه quatrain، وفاينل رايمنج كابلت، اخر سطرين في السونت. كل كواترن كان بينقل الفير بتاعه. اول فير بدأه طبيعي هو his fear not to be able to write his books and to write his poetry and to leave a legacy behind. Okay? And then what is his second fear? He's afraid not to be able to use nature and to enjoy the beauty of nature. وحتة النيتشر والبيوتي اوف نيتشر ده كان امر طبيعي جدا بالنسبة لكل الرومانتيك بويتس، فما كانش غريب ان دي حاجة تكون بتشغل باله. ليه؟ لان دي حاجة ليها اهمية كبيرة عند كل الرومانتيك بويتس. وخوفه الاخير ان هو ما يقدرش to meet the woman that he might love. Okay? يبقى it is a standard sonnet written in iambic pentameter. iambic pentameter يعني عندي unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. It consists of 3 quatrains. Each quatrain discusses one of his fears. What are Keats's fears? How does he introduce them in his sonnet? Keats expresses his fear that he will be deprived of the 3 things that he values most. خلاص؟ هو عنده 3 things he values most. He's afraid he will be deprived of these 3 things in his life. ايه هما؟ أول حاجة واللي ظهرت في أول quatrain writing poetry of varied ideas. تاني حاجة experience the wonderful mystery of nature and gain experience from it. Okay? To gain experience, to learn from nature, to use the different elements, the different symbols that could be found in nature, to use them in his poetry. And his third and final fear is experience the magical power of passionate love. Each of the 3 quatrains in this Shakespearean sonnet deals with one of his fears. How does Keats end his poem? The poet ends his poem with a change in his thoughts. الفاينل rhyming couplet هم عبارة عن تغيير كامل في his vision, في his point of view. Okay? The poem expresses 2 major thoughts. أنا عندي نقطتين أساسيتين في البوم دي. The first part of the sonnet expresses Keats' fear of dying young. خوفه من إن هو يموت صغير، مش خوفه من الموت نفسه. Okay? With the result that he will not fulfill himself as a writer. مش هيقدر يحقق ذاته ككاتب، كشاعر. He knows that he has the potential to be a good poet. Okay? He has the potential to be a good poet, but he will not be able to realize his dreams. Losing his beloved is his other fear. Then in the final couplet he resolves his fears. بيحل كل المخاوف دي. اوكي؟ بيبص للمخاوف دي من منظور تاني خالص، فبيبتدي يهدى ويحس ان هو they don't need all this stress. Okay? In the final couplet he resolves his fears by asserting the unimportance of love and fame. هم ملهمش أهمية، ملهمش الأهمية الكبيرة اللي هو عشانها عنده كل الخوف ده. هم ملهمش الأهمية الكبيرة دي لأن هم كده كده هينتهوا بموته. اوكي؟ فهو he ends his poem ازاي؟ with a change in his thoughts، بتغيير كامل في أفكاره. وأشرح ايه هو التغيير ده. What is the dominant figure of speech used in the first quatrain? The central metaphor is the comparison between writing poetry and harvesting grain. الفيرست quatrain كله عبارة عن harvest metaphor، مستخدم the harvest metaphor في كل الكواترن. اوكي؟ comparison ما بين writing poetry كتابة الشعر and harvesting grain وزراعة الجرين الحبوب. The first quatrain emphasizes how fertile his imagination is and how much he has to express. Hence the use of the imagery of the harvest. أول quatrain هو ليه استخدم هذا الميتافور بتاع الحصاد؟ علشان يأكد ويبين how fertile his imagination is. هو عنده خيال خصب، عنده أفكار، عنده مواضيع، عنده حاجات عاوز يتكلم فيها. فالحاجات دي كلها هي الجرين اللي لسه عاوز ينمو ويكبر، وبعد كده يتعمل له harvesting. اوكي؟ hence the use of the imagery of the harvest. The poet identifies one of his fears for the reader. It's not merely death that worries him, but the fear that he may not achieve his full creative potential. ما يحققش كامل إبداعه. اوكي؟ الفول كرييتيف بوتنشال بتاعه دوت عمل له كومباريسون لايه؟ فول رايبند جرين. اوكي؟ الايماجينيشن بتاعته دي لما تبقى ماتيور، لما تبقى رايب، اوكي، هي عامله زي الجرين اللي بيتزرع وبعد كده بياخد وقته فينمو ويكبر ويقدر يتحصد بعد ما يبقى رايب. لكن هو مش هيقدر يكون عنده الفرصه لتنميه افكاره ولتنميه خياله، لان هو death will cut short his poetic career. اوكي؟ his full ripened grain، افكاره دي اذا حصل لها انها نمت وكبرت وازدهرت ورعرعت كده زي الزروع، هيحصل ايه؟ it will be compiled in books، هتبقى محطوطة في كتب، في high piled books، كتب كتيرة قوي. اوكي؟ الكتب الكتيرة او الهاي بايلد بوكس دي نفسها زي الجارنرز اللي بيتحط فيها الحبوب، زي الصوامع بتاعت الغلال، هيبقى فيها كل افكاره اللي هي نمت وكبرت وبقت ماتيور. full ripened grain ايه المقصود بيها؟ الميتافور ايه؟ full ripened grain refers to his ideas that need to be written down. خلاص؟ they are like grain to be harvested. The fruits of the poet's mind become ripened only as the poet ages, and therefore his writings are mature in content. Thus, there will be no chance for harvesting them. الأفكار بتاعت الشاعر، أوكي، كل أفكاره الفروتس of his mind هتكبر إمتى وهتبقى رايب إمتى؟ لما يكبر في السن، لأن كل ما هيكبر كل ما هتبقى عنده experience أحسن. أوكي؟ كل ما الرايتنجز بتاعه هيبقى mature in content. خلاص؟ لكن لأنه هو مش هيبقى عنده الفرصة دي، there will be no chance for harvesting them. مش هيبقى فيه فرصة لأن يحصل حصاد للأفكار دي. These fruits which are his poetic works grant the poet fame and are represented by the high piled books. الpoetic works دي هي اللي هتديله الشهرة اللي هو عايزها وبيتمناها. And they are represented by high piled books. البوكس دي are compared to garners which will hold all his written work exactly as garners hold grain. البوكس دي will hold all his ideas, all his mature ideas. يبقى ال dominant figure of speech in the first quatrain is the harvest metaphor. واستخدمه ليه؟ in order to emphasize the fertility of his imagination. Okay? طيب. What is the significance of using the following words؟ الكلمات دي ليه الشاعر اختارها هي بالذات؟ ليه اختار دي وما اختارش حاجات تانية؟ مثلا كلمة teeming، اوكي، teeming brain، تفتكروا هو كان بيقصد ايه teeming brain؟ yes، كان بيقصد his brain that is full of ideas. اختيار كلمة teeming بالING اللي فيها it suggests that the speaker is still full of life and ideas. هو لسه مليان حياة وعنده أفكار كتيرة، فكونه شاب وعنده أفكار وعنده حياة، كل ده بيتناقض مع إيه؟ مع موته القريب ده. he still has a lot to give. Okay, so the word teeming suggests that the speaker is full of life and full of ideas. عنده حياة، يعني لسه شاب، لسه عنده روح الشباب، اوكي، وعنده افكار كتيرة مالية his brain, and he wants to put these ideas down on paper in the form of his poems. ونفسه ان هو ياخد وقته عشان الايدياز بتاعته دي to become mature like the grain, and when it becomes mature this will be the suitable time for these grains to be harvested. طيب teeming عرفناها. ايه السيجنيفيكانس بتاع high piled و rich؟ اول ما اشوف كلمة rich و high بيديني على طول احساس بالabundance، اوكي، الكثرة، الوفرة، اوكي. high piled books، انا اقدر اكتب بوكس كتيرة جدا. ليه؟ because I have many great ideas. This is what Keats believes in. اوكي. gleaned grain garners فيهم ايه؟ طبعا عندي repetition of the first sound، والrepetition of the first sound اسمها ايه؟ اسمها alliteration. اوكي، الاليتريشن دي بتعمل ايه عندي في اي poem؟ it creates musicality, it creates rhythm، وفي نفس الوقت هو استخدم كلمات كلها ليها علاقة بالharvesting. ليه؟ to focus our attention on this image. يبقى alliteration creates rhythm، وبما ان هو مستخدم all the words belong to harvesting، فهو he is focusing the reader's attention on the harvest image. When و before، ايه significance of using these words frequently throughout the sonnet؟ طبعا they indicate time and they show that he is aware of the passage of time. He is aware that time goes by very quickly and that he will die very soon. So the repetition of these adverbs suggests the passage of time and shows that the poet is aware of his threatening death. He knows that he's going to die in a very short time. Why does Keats refer to his beloved as fair creature of an hour؟ ساعة واحدة بس. طبعا he refers to his beloved as a fair creature of an hour because like him she is going to die. Okay, she is mortal like him. Therefore, her life in this world is very short. So Keats refers to his beloved as fair creature of an hour because she too is at the mercy of time. She is a creature of an hour. She too has a short lifespan because, like him, she is mortal. The image implies that she's mortal and that humans don't have much time to spend on this earth. خلاص؟ عشان كده he refers to her fair creature of an hour. مهما عشتي ومهما أنا عشت هي لحظات، كأنها لحظات بنقضيها في الدنيا دي. فلايك him she's mortal، وهو he refers to her as such because she too is at the mercy of time. Paraphrase the final couplet. طيب الفاينل couplet بيقول لي ايه؟ بيقول لي of the wide world I stand alone and think till love and fame to nothingness do sink. ده الفاينل couplet. البارافريز بتاعه finally after reflecting upon his feelings which the act of writing this sonnet has involved, Keats thinks about human insignificance compared to the whole world. He finally accepts the unimportance of his desire for fame and love, and thus ceases to fear and yearn. He realizes that death turns everything into nothingness. Therefore, his high hopes for fame and love are not worth such intense stress. ادي البارافريز بتاع الفاينل couplet. Of this wide world I stand alone and think till love and fame to nothingness do think. أنا I stand alone here in this world and I am very insignificant compared to this wide world. Okay? And if I go on thinking this way, this is very futile, this is useless, because once I will die, all the things that I worry about will die with me. So this is futile. Okay? His high hopes for fame and love are not worth his intense stress. Keats' sonnet shows a deviation in his thoughts reflected in the poem. Explain. يعني عندي a change in his thoughts. He started thinking this one way but ends up thinking in a different way. ده معناها a deviation in his thoughts في القصيدة دي. طيب بنقول there is a major reversal in the thoughts or desires that shaped the first lines of the poem. Keats starts to change his thoughts in line 12. في الآخر خالص the final couplet. He has spent much time thinking about fame and love. The first section develops a single concept, his desire for love and success, and his certainty that death will cut those desires short. Then the poem turns. The second section reverses these thoughts, taking the poem to a new direction. Now his focus is wider. It's on the wide world. The last lines reject all of his desires as futile. He realizes that death turns everything into nothing. Therefore, his high hopes for fame and love are not worth such intense stress. بدأ بكل حاجة مضايقاه وبيفكر فيها وحاسس انه مش هيقدر يحققها، قعد يتكلم عن ده كتير لغاية لما في الآخر أدرك إن his thoughts are futile. are useless. It's useless thinking this way. مفيش فايدة لما هو يفكر بالطريقة دي، لأن death takes everything with it. So why worry about these things that death will take with it? They will no longer exist. What is the theme of this sonnet? What is the main idea that Keats is trying to convey throughout this sonnet? The theme is human mortality, which is one of the famous themes of the Romantics. Keats is afraid of death at a very young age, but his fear is justified. He lost his father at the age of 10. A year later, his grandfather died. In his early teens, his mother died. Exposed to so much death at a young age, Keats realized the transience of life. The sonnet gives expression to his personal fear of his own early death, which would doom to oblivion his human longings and artistic ambition. يبقى the main theme is the theme that of human mortality. Human beings are immortals. They don't live forever. One day they pass away and they leave everything behind. Okay? Human mortality is one of the famous themes of the Romantics. He is afraid of death at a young age, but we have to clarify that he is not afraid of death in itself. He is afraid that death will deprive him of the things that he values most in his life. He will deprive him of the chance to write many books, to write poetry. He will deprive him of the chance to use the different symbols of nature in his poems. It will deprive him of meeting the woman he might love. So he is afraid that death might deprive him of all these things. Why is he afraid of death, or why he thinks as such? ليه هو بيفكر بالطريقة دي في سنه الصغير ده؟ هو بيفكر بالطريقة دي في السن الصغير لأن هو he has been exposed to difficult experiences since he was very young. Okay? His father died, and then his grandfather, and then his mother. So he realized very early the transience of life. He realized that our life on earth is short-lived, is very short-lived actually. Okay? So believing in this, he wrote this poem. He expresses his fear. He expresses that he is afraid not of death in itself, but he is afraid of the idea of being deprived of doing what he wants and what he would like to achieve and realize in his life. Okay? طيب دي كانت الثيم بتاعت السونت بتاعت كيتس. طب لو حبينا نفتكر مثلا الثيم او المسج اللي كان وورثورث عايز يقولها كانت ايه؟ ده كيتس بيتكلم عن الدث وبيتكلم عن ان حياتنا on earth is very short، بيتكلم عن ده. وورثورث بيتكلم عن a totally different thing، بيتكلم عن the beauty of nature and the beauty of life. والمسج بتاعت وورثورث في البوم بتاعته in the city is as beautiful as nature. البوم بتاعته is very optimistic. okay? It's full of life. He's giving life to the city. He's giving life to everything. He's using even a rhyme scheme بتاعه. الرايم سكيم الورثورث مستخدمه، حتى الرايم سكيم بتاعه ده resembles heart beats. خلاص؟ فالثيم اللي كيتس مستخدمها عاوز يقولها هي human mortality. Our life on earth is very short. All humans have a transient life on earth. خلاص؟ So he believes that he wants to make as much as possible of his life before he dies, and he is very much worried about the things that he will not be able to achieve. He is worried about the things that he will not be able to accomplish because of death. And then all of a sudden he realizes that this is futile thinking, and that because death will come and will take everything with it, he should not think this way. He should not be that stressed. Okay, so the theme here is human mortality. خلاص؟ انما الثيم او المسج اللي worthworth كان بيقولها لنا هي ايه؟ ان the city is as beautiful as nature. وعلشان هو كان بيتكلم عن the beauty of nature and the beauty of the city، استخدم لنا hyperbolic language، استخدم exaggeration علشان ينقل مشاعره دي. ف he uses hyperbole in his sonnet. ازاي؟ explain. The sonnet opens with hyperbole. The earth has no other sight as beautiful as the one the poet is seeing at the present. He believes that anyone who could see the sight he is witnessing and pass by without being stunned by its beauty has a dull spirit. The sonnet opens with a sense of disbelief and exaggeration when he says that he has never seen the sun rise more beautifully. When it appears and shines brightly, it lights up the hills, the rocks, and the valleys, all the elements of the natural landscape. The whole sight brings him a sense of peace he has never before experienced. The whole picture he is describing gives him a sense of peace and shows him the beauty of nature and the beauty of London. But السونت بتاع جون كيتس gives him أو gives us his sense of fear. It reflects, it expresses his sense of fear. الثيم بتاعته أو المسج بتاعته كانت human mortality. إنما المسج أو الidea conveyed by Wordsworth is the beauty of nature and the beauty of the city. And when both work together harmoniously, the beauty that results from their harmonious combination is incomparable. Okay? وعلشان كده Wordsworth بيستخدم hyperbolic language in order to reveal or to express his ideas. Okay? He is exaggerating things. Why is he exaggerating things? Because he himself is very surprised. Okay? He is so surprised. He has never imagined to see London in this way. احنا اتكلمنا عن الثيمز بتاعت كيتس والايدياز reflected in Wordsworth. شفنا الديفرنت فورمز بتاعت التو سونتس، ازاي ان كيتس مستخدم الشكسبيريان سونت، Wordsworth مستخدم البتراركان سونت. كل فورم كان very suitable for the ideas conveyed throughout the poem، لأن كيتس has three fears. These three fears are conveyed or are reflected in the three quatrains, and then in the final couplet we have a reversal in his thoughts and ideas. عندي Wordsworth مستخدم ال Petrarchan أو Italian sonnet. He's talking about the beauty of nature. He's talking about London and the beauty of London in the first octave, and then in the sestet he refers to the beauty of nature, and again refers to the fact that when both combine together the result is incomparable beauty. شفنا ال different figures of speech وعرفنا ان المين figure of speech used by Keats كانت الميتافور، وان هو استخدم الميتافور of harvest دي in order to emphasize the fertility of his imagination. فحتى الميتافور اللي هو استخدمه was very suitable for his ideas. بالنسبة لورثورث الميتافور اللي هو استخدمه اكتر حاجة كان البيرسونيفيكيشن، واستخدم personification in more than one place in his poem to give life to the city. شفنا الثيم بتاعت جون كيتس اللي هي الهيومن مورتاليتي، وشفنا ان ويليام وورثورث الايديا بتاعته كانت مختلفة تماما. هو كان بيتكلم عن البيوتي اوف نيتشر، وكان بيتكلم عن ان اي حد يعدي يشوف المنظر الجميل اللي هو شافه ده and does not stop doesn't have a lively spirit. two different ideas. وطبعا علشان كده اللانجوج هنا كانت مختلفة تماما عن وورثورث. اتكلمنا في regarding البوتري والاناليسيس بتاعه. عرفنا الرومانتيك موفمنت، وعرفنا مين الميجر فيجرز بتوعها، وعرفنا ان جون كيتس وويليام وورثورث كانوا من two very famous romantic poets especially طبعا ويليام وورثورث. ايه الايدياز that are usually conveyed through their poems؟ كانت النيتشر and the beauty of nature and the importance of nature is one of the dominant themes and ideas that are used by all romantics. وشفنا ازاي ان كيتس كان كين ان هو يستخدم nature in his poems علشان قد ايه النيتشر دي كانت عنصر مهم جدا بالنسبة لكل الرومانتيك poets. فهو one of his fears كانت not to be able to use nature properly in his poetry. ولأن النيتشر برضو is very important، فطبعا ويليام وورثورث استخدمها and he referred to nature in his poem composed upon Westminster Bridge. وأساسا Wordsworth was known as the poet of nature because of his love and his reflection for nature in most of his poems. In his poem too, he uses nature and he makes clear that the city is as beautiful as nature, and when man-made beauty is combined with the beauty of nature, the result will be incomparable. عرفنا ال different figures of speech that could be used in poetry، مثلا personification، وشفنا ازاي ان ويليام وورثورث استخدم personification كتير في البوم بتاعته composed upon Westminster Bridge. هي دي كانت ال dominant figure of speech اللي ويليام وورثورث استخدمه. في figure of speech تاني معروف في البوتري طبعا اللي هو الميتافور، وشفنا ازاي ان جون كيتس الدوميننت figure of speech اللي هو كان مستخدمه في البوم بتاعته كان الميتافور، واستخدم بالذات الهارفست ميتافور ليه؟ in order to show or emphasize the fertility of his imagination. عرفنا كمان الحاجات that create rhythm in the poem namely alliteration مثلا. وخدنا different example للalliteration، وشفنا ازاي ان الalliteration بتستخدم to create musicality and at the same time for other purposes، زي مثلا في البوم بتاع جون كيتس لما استخدم alliteration في جرين وجارنر، وقلنا ان هي alliteration و at the same time because they belong to the harvest imagery فهم he wants to focus the reader's attention on this image. خدنا الalliteration وشوفنا ازاي هي بتعمل musicality، عرفنا ال different figures of speech such as الميتافور والpersonification والsimile، وشوفنا الsimile ازاي استخدمها ويليام وورثورث when he compared when he makes a comparison between the morning and he mentioned that it is like a dress, the early morning is like a dress and this dress is being used by the city. فعندي personification وعندي simile at the same time, the different figures of speech that can be used in a poem. عرفنا ال different rhyme scheme وشفنا ان ويليام وورثورث استخدم ال Petrarchan sonnet with its specific rhyme scheme ABBA ABBA CD CD CD، وان this suits very much his idea because he was referring to London as the heart of England. فالرايم سكيم اللي هو مستخدمه برضو it's like heart beating، was very relevant to his ideas, very relevant to what he was trying to convey throughout the poem. ولأن he was all the time أو he wants to say that London is a busy city, is a big city, there is movement all the time، فعشان كده برضو الرايم سكيم بتاع البوم بتاعته resembles heart beat. استخدام الفورم نفسه بتاع السونت كان very relevant للايدياز بتاعت كل شاعر درسناه. وورثورث استخدم البتراركن سونت، عمل ايديا في الاوكتيف، اتكلم عن السيتي، عن the beauty of the city and then in the sister اتكلم عن ال beauty of nature. بالنسبة لجون كيتس استخدم طبعا الشكسبيريان sonnet and it was very suitable for his purpose اللي هو كان reflection أو showing his fear, 3 fears in particular, and he discusses each fear in 1 quatrain. And finally, in the end, he reverses all his thoughts and he presents a totally different idea. احنا كده اتكلمنا عن ال different elements of poetry، اتكلمنا عن movement اللي هي الرومانتك movement، اخدنا examples للرومانتك poets جون كيتس وويليام وورثورث، وشفنا ازاي ال different elements بتاعة البوتري ممكن الشاعر بيستخدمها وكيفية استخدامها ازاي in order to reflect his feelings and his ideas as vividly as possible and in the most distilled language, in the most beautiful language as possible. Thank you very much and good luck.